Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Boba Fett. I hope you enjoy it. If you don't know, my name's Isaiah. I am a somewhat YouTuber, not really though, and I wanted to talk about the Book of Boba Fett. Huge Star Wars fan. I have some thoughts on this. Before we dive in, I'm just going to say this is a spoiler-filled review. Most of these episodes have been out for at least a week now, except for the finale, of course, and I just feel like I can get the most out of my discussion of this by talking spoilers. So if you don't want anything spoiled, just leave the video now and come back later once you've actually seen the show. But if you don't care about spoilers, I would recommend still skipping this because it's best to go in things cold. If you have seen the show though, stick around. I'm going to talk about it to the best of my ability, analyze it, and hopefully you get something out of it. Through this episode by episode because I feel like that's the best way to do it, because the episode structure is kind of this show's biggest problem. So let's just get into episode 1. It's a good episode, I would say. It's nothing that I would like come back to immediately. Like there are episodes of like The Mandalorian, even a couple episodes of this show which we'll get into, that I want to come back to like right away. It's fine, it exists. It's a decent enough introduction to the storyline, reintroduction to these characters. There's no big hook at the end of this episode. The pilot episode of The Mandalorian had a big hook at the end where you met Baby Yoda, child, whatever you want to call him, and it was a big moment and you wanted to like immediately see what happened. This episode though doesn't really have a huge hook. That's its biggest flaw. It doesn't have that moment that makes me go like, oh my gosh, I need to see the next episode of this. Holy crap. It's a good introduction, like I said. However, it is very flashback heavy, and that can be a bit overwhelming at times, at least for me. But I thought it was fine. Overall, it was fine. Let's just get into the next episode. Episode 2, I have a lot more to talk about here. I really liked this episode. I really consider this like a two-half series because the second half is very different from the first half. Out of the first half episodes, which I consider 1 through 4, this is easily my favorite. This is a great episode. Again, you don't really focus on the main plot that much. Like it's the first 15 minutes or so. 15 minutes of actual plot. The other 35, 40 minutes or so are with the Tuscans. And that stuff is awesome. I really liked how they sort of humanized these Tuscan Raiders that you originally saw in the first Star Wars movie when that came out, and they sort of seemed like threatening bad guys. However, with this, they sort of become more human, and it's really interesting how their culture is clearly inspired by a lot of tribal communities throughout our worlds, right? In real life. I like how they sold the steer bikes and this meme.
Like a panther. Yes?
Quality meme, I must say. Great episode. I really liked it. This made me excited to see the rest of the episodes. Let's just dive into episode 3. Episode 3 is these next two episodes, man. Both episode 3 and episode 4. Screw 'em, I'm lumping them together. Episodes 3 and 4 sort of get mixed up in my head a little bit. They're okay. My big issue with them is that they just don't focus on the main plot. They're way more focused on the flashbacks. The flashbacks are important because they come back in the finale, but at the same time, you're supposed to be focused on the Pikes coming into Tatooine, but yet you're not focused on that. You're focused on explaining where Boba Fett had been all these years, which is important. You know, I totally get why they did that, and I would have heavily focused on flashbacks too if I was making this. But at the same time, I wanted to know the main plot and what was going on with that. We're about halfway through the show, like more than halfway through the show at this point. At the end of episode 3, the Pikes come in. At the end of episode 4, they hint that they need muscle. Doesn't really feel developed at all. It's very sort of like, okay, we're more interested in the flashbacks. But after episode 4, I was like, okay, we're gonna focus more on Boba Fett. The Mando theme was at the end of episode 4, so we're probably gonna see him. That's sick. Did some of that, and they also didn't in these next few episodes. So let's just talk about it. Episode 5, it's a Mandalorian episode. Boba Fett is not in a single frame here. Like, Fennec Shand shows up in like the last 30 seconds or whatever. It's might be the best episode of the series so far. Like, this episode was awesome. I love seeing Mando. I love the opening scene where Mando like kicks the crap out of all those crime bosses or whatever they are. And I love seeing him use the Darksaber. I love seeing him interact with the other Mandalorians again. It was great. I also like that his new starfighters and that boost starfighter. It's not something I saw coming, but I really like it in retrospect. It's a great episode. Like, even by the Mandalorian standards, it's a great episode, The Mandalorian. But only the last 30 seconds feel like an episode of the Book of Boba Fett. Because Boba Fett's not in this a frame. It's all about the Mandalorian, him wanting to see Grogu again and getting his new ship. And it's sort of like a detour. It's a really good detour, mind you. But it's also a detour. And after this episode, I was like, okay, we're going to focus on the main plot finally. We have 2 episodes. We have to get through this quickly. And then episode 6 happened. Chapter 6, episode 6, whatever it is not a Book of Boba Fett episode. It's not a Mandalorian episode. Well, it is somewhat, but it's not really. It's a Book of Star Wars episode. Boba Fett is in this, but he's in it for 15 seconds and says, like, nothing. Like, half this episode is focused on the Mandalorian going to Luke's Jedi Temple as it's being built and wanting to see Grogu and giving him the gift that the armor made him, like, in the middle of episode 5. That's pretty much the first half of the episode. You get to see Luke, which he looks amazing. I do have problems with his voice, though. I would prefer them to have, like, a voice actor for him. I love seeing their training sequences with Grogu. Ahsoka is also in this episode. Ahsoka has more lines in the Book of Boba Fett in these last 2 episodes than Boba Fett has. And I didn't even expect her to be in this. Like, if you told me Ahsoka was in the Book of Boba Fett, I wouldn't have believed you. I love seeing her and Luke interact. I like that it wasn't their first interaction, because their first interaction would be really hard to do. Like, I wouldn't know how to do that. I'm pretty sure no one would know how to do that. At the end of the day, it doesn't really focus on Boba Fett. And it's like the last, whatever, the episode when Mando actually goes back to Tatooine, it actually focuses on getting soldiers and stuff. And I'm like, okay, now we're getting into the episode. And Boba Fett shows up for 15 seconds, doesn't have any lines, and it's about Mando collecting soldiers. You know, going to Cobb Vanth, which was really cool. And then we get, oh boy, one of the best moments in live action Star Wars. Freaking Cad Bane is in this! Oh my goodness! Cad Bane was awesome to see. I wanted him to show up in the show so bad. Like, when I heard theories that he might, I'm like, oh, that's what I want right there. Yeah, that's what I want. He was great. I thought he looked amazing. I know some people had problems with the appearances, but I thought he looked scary. I thought he looked menacing. Got Corey Burton doing the voice again. He was awesome. I loved it. The standoff scene is one of the best scenes in Star Wars I've seen in a long time. It was very tense. A great introduction to Cad Bane's character in live action. This show so far has been a bit of a roller coaster for me, at least. Been a mess. I've enjoyed it, but it's also been a mess. And episode 7 finally touches on the main plot. Like, dang, it took you 7 episodes. Episode 7 finally again touches on this main plot, and I was like, holy crap, we're actually getting to the Boba Fett stuff. No freaking way! But yeah, we get back to the Boba Fett stuff. It's actually great. I really like this finale. Nothing unpredictable happened necessarily, but I thought it was a good way to wrap things up. I liked seeing Boba Fett kill Cad Bane, killing his bounty hunter past in a way. I wanted to see Cad Bane live, but at the same time, I understood why they killed him, because he's old. I liked seeing Grogu fly an X-Wing. That was interesting. It sort of made the last episode make sense in terms of the series, because it set up Grogu as a better Force user than he was in The Mandalorian. He comes back. I liked that. I still think the show should have focused more on the Boba Fett stuff, because, you know, it's Book of Boba Fett. But yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. With that sort of general summary, I liked this show. I did. It's not as good as The Mandalorian, either seasons of that. I feel like both those seasons are on par, by the way. This show is a mess. It really is. It feels like it's setting up too much. Like, first 4 episodes are a character study of Boba Fett. It's pretty interesting. The 5th episode is a Mandalorian episode, which sort of helps set up Mandalorian season 3, right? And then episode 6 is sort of the Book of Star Wars. Like I said, you have Mando, you have Ahsoka, you have Luke, you have Grogu, and you have Cad Bane at the end, right? It's setting up so much, and at the same time, it's just kind of a mess. I really love that episode 6, but it's a mess. And look, the big problem with the show is that from the get-go, they should have focused on just Boba Fett. They really should have. And they just focus on everything except the main plot. Like, when they were focusing on Boba Fett the most, it was those flashback scenes, which are important, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you should be focusing on Boba Fett in the present. You shouldn't be focusing on him in the past as much, because this storyline is supposed to take place right now as him becoming the main crime lord of Tatooine. That's sort of what you should be focusing on, yet you weren't. Again, I enjoyed this show, I did, but I feel like there's a lot. I feel like season 2 would be better of this, because I'm assuming they're going to set up a lot less, and they're going to be focusing more on a sort of, I guess, present day storyline by Book of Boba Fett standards. And I'm not going to give this a grade. I'll give it a good but not great review. again, I enjoy any Star Wars property that's just average, so keep that in mind too. But I feel like this show could have been better than it was, and that's just what it is. Alright, so what did you think about Book of Boba Fett? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you'd like. I do plan to make videos like this more often when I have time. I'm a college student, so at times kind of varied, but I plan to make videos like this. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, like, subscribe if you want to, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. See ya. Bum ba da bum ba da hum ba hum bum